What's up, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, August 28th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Today on the show, we've got big news at the reliever position. I mean that both literally and physically. The Cubs promoted Jordan Wicks, and he pitched quite well in his debut this weekend. We've got waiver wire moves, starter sit decisions, and much more. Before we get started, help us out by liking this video and subscribing on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. We really do appreciate it. Scott, let's unfortunately start with that big reliever news of the weekend. Felix Bautista placed on the IL with a UCL injury. We don't know much more outside of that as of now. Obviously, hoping this isn't a long-term injury, no kind of surgery required, but we'll see. Reliever that throws this hard, it sounds kind of scary. But obviously he was amazing this year. 1.48 ERA, a .92 whip, 33 saves. Currently the number one reliever in Roto, the 20th overall player. That's how dominant he's been this year. The second reliever in head-to-head points behind only Spencer Strider. And now we need to figure out what to do. Who are the replacements here? And I think one of the obvious candidates is the player on his same team. Yennier Cano, who picked up a save on Saturday. It was his fifth save of the season. He's 54% rostered. He also pitched on Sunday, had an unearned run, took a tough luck loss there. But your thoughts, Scott? This is big news, and there's obviously a pretty big replacement here in Yennier Cano.
Yeah, I mean, we talked in recent weeks about how Felix Bautista is probably the best closer in fantasy now, and so we obviously don't like to see him suffer an injury like this. Usually when you're talking UCL damage, it means Tommy John surgery, in which case Bautista would be wiped out for all of next year too. Not always. I mean, it may be a sprained UCL, which is technically a small tear, but a lot of times it doesn't require the full reconstruction surgery. It just requires rest. So we'll wait and see what the actual timetable is for this injury for Bautista, but we know he's out for the rest of this year, if nothing else. I think it's safe to say. The good news, if you want a silver lining, is that there aren't many teams who have as obvious a replacement for their closer as the Orioles do and Yennier Cano. I've said a few times this year also that the Orioles might have both the best closer and the best setup man in the game. Cano's been very effective this season. He's not the big bat misser that Bautista is, but a 1.60 ERA, a .97 whip entering Sunday for a guy who's been on the roster since the beginning. And he has 5 saves. So, one of them, those came after Bautista went down, obviously, but he was used as the backup closer at times this year. He's still available in half of CBS leagues. And I think he makes for a ready-made replacement there. And probably is going to be the top priority on the waiver wire for me in all of my leagues. Where waivers haven't run already.
Yeah, absolutely. There. Big name in Yennier Cano this weekend. Just sticking with the Orioles for a second, what else happens as a result here? DL Hall was recalled, former top pitching prospect. He's expected to pitch out of the bullpen, so I don't think there's much there. Quickly on some other relievers that could be available. The most added on CBS this weekend, obviously Cano is up at the top, and he's still widely available at 54% rostered. Cole Ragans, who is a SPARP, 74%. Obviously, we talk about Cole Ragans quite a bit.
Yep.
Javier Assad is also a SPARP, and he had another great start this weekend. 7 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. Seth Lugo, someone I know both of us like quite a bit. He's up to 77%. And Kyle Finnegan, 65%. Scott, if we're just talking about the most added here, how would you rank them? Cano, Cole Ragans, Assad, Seth Lugo, and Kyle Finnegan.
Well, interestingly, you only mentioned one actual reliever. So obvious. Okay. Who was the other one?
Cano and
Cano himself. Okay. So, the Sparps only make for decent replacements in a points league. And so that kind of makes this a little unconventional ranking them together. If you're in a categories league and you're mostly looking to replace saves, obviously you'd go for Cano and Finnegan before you went for any of the pitchers, with one exception, I'd say, because Cole Reagans is just an amazing pickup if he's still available in your league as a starting pitcher. And if you can slot him in your relief pitcher spot in a points league, great. That takes care of it. I think he'll perform up to the standard that's required for a starting pitcher to measure up to a closer's production in a points league. Otherwise, I guess I'd go Cano second, Lugo third, Finnegan fourth, and who's left? Assad?
Yep.
Assad fifth. Assad a distant fifth, I'd say.
If you do need specifically saves, obviously we've already talked about Cano, and Kyle Finnegan has been pretty dominant for the Washington Nationals. Two other names that are less than 60% rostered. Alex Lang, looks like they've gone back to him in the Tigers bullpen there. And Aroldis Chapman, he's only 45% rostered. He had a save opportunity on Sunday. Unfortunately, didn't convert it. He gave up a run and took his, I think, 5th or 6th blown save of the year. But I still think the next save opportunity will go to Aroldis Chapman when the Rangers have one. And then some names in deeper leagues: Jojo Romero, Tanner Scott, and Trevor May. Quickly on Tanner Scott, that's the other reliever news of the weekend. The Marlins expected to remove David Robertson from the closing role after blowing another save on Saturday. What happens on Sunday? Tanner Scott, save opportunity, picks up his 3rd save of the year. So a couple more options out there in deeper leagues. Let's rank all of them, Scott. If you need saves, Yennier Cano, Kyle Finnegan, Alex Lang, Aroldis Chapman, Jojo Romero, Tanner Scott, Trevor May. Lots of names. I think that's 7 names.
That is a lot of names. I'm tempted to put Chapman number 1 because I think he's just the best reliever, but it's a little less certain to me that he will for sure be the Rangers closer the rest of the way. It certainly looks like they're leaning that way in a strong way. But I think I will go ahead and put Yennier Cano ahead of Chapman. So Cano 1, Chapman 2. Let's see. I'm going to say Tanner Scott 3, even though that's a little bit uncertain too. He has the big strikeout potential that we want from a closer, 12.7 K per 9 coming into Sunday's game. So Scott 3, then I will go Finnegan 4, Lang 5, May 6th, and then Jojo Romero. You mentioned him, right?
Yep.
7th. Yeah, so to just rattle that off again real quick. Yennier Cano, Aroldis Chapman, Tanner Scott, Kyle Finnegan, Alex Lang, Trevor May, Jojo Romero.
And would you be okay dropping David Robertson for any of these names? He's 81% rostered. I guess there's a chance he could get the role back, but there's not that much time left in the season, so.
I'd be fine with it I'd be fine with it. I hesitate with those bottom 2, Trevor May and Jojo Romero, because I think it's likely they end up doing just as much harm as good. But yeah, if you need saves, they're more likely to give you them over the next couple weeks than Robertson is.
All right. Again, the big news from the weekend: Felix Bautista placed on the IL with a UCL injury. The Mountain, get well soon, buddy. I say that as if we're friends, and he knows who I am. Let's talk about the rest of the weekend.
Wow! Hey now! Hey now! Hey now!
That is a call from the Seattle Mariners, which, by the way, they are red hot. I think I saw they have the best record since July 1st, and now they're in first place in the AL West. So shout out to them. Scott, you're up. Player of the weekend.
I'm going to go with Jordan Wicks, a recent call-up for the Cubs. He made his major league debut over the weekend. It was Saturday, actually. Left-handed starting pitcher. Looked great at the Pirates. Went 5 innings, allowed only 1 run on 2 hits, struck out 9. That is a nice debut for a prospect call-up who didn't get a lot of buzz in fantasy circles. Had 13 swinging strikes on 80 pitches. That's obviously a great rate. 9 of those 13 strikes came on the changeup, which was his most thrown pitch at 34%. And that basically lives up to the scouting reports. His entire arsenal serves to set up the changeup. That is his everything pitch. He has several other pitches. It's not one of those cases where he comes up, only has 2 pitches. Does he have a deep enough arsenal? He has a variety of pitches, but it's all built around the changeup. He leans on it a lot, and it needs to be working for him to be effective. And so I think that's why you look at the minor league numbers for Jordan Wicks. They won't blow you away. 3.55 ERA, 117 WHIP, 9.8 K per 9. Solid numbers, but I wouldn't say spectacular numbers. But this was a spectacular debut, and sometimes, sometimes pitchers are better in the majors than they were in the minors. I would say Jordan Wicks is worth picking up wherever you need pitching help. I don't know that he's a must-add. I'm sure, like, if it's Cole Reagans versus Jordan Wicks, you're debating, then no contest. You go Cole Reagans. Jordan Wicks, if he gets shelled next time out, I'm not going to hesitate to drop him for the next flavor of the week. But right now, he's the flavor of the week, and he's highly available, and I would say worth looking into.
Again, Jordan Wicks, a first-round pick from back in 2021. Scott mentioned the numbers from the minors. And yeah, that changeup, everything that I've read, that's the money pitch for him. But I thought it was interesting. He only used his curveball 9% in this debut. The spin rate, 2,881 RPM on that curveball. So there might actually be something there as like a second dominant pitch for Jordan Wicks. He's 18% rostered. Looks like he is at the Cincinnati Reds this week. Their offense has been up and down in the second half, and they're actually much better against righties than they are against lefties. So it's a decent matchup. I don't know that I want to trust him maybe outside of deeper leagues if you're really desperate, but he's an interesting pitcher.
This is a fun detail about him too, because you say the Reds are better against righties than lefties. Jordan Wicks has historically, even as left-handed pitcher, been better against righties. He has reverse platoon splits because that changeup's so good.
That would make sense, yeah.
Known for neutralizing opposite-handed hitters to the point that some pitchers don't even throw a changeup against same-handed hitters. Wicks isn't like that. Like I said, the changeup is everything, but he does make for an interesting matchup case because of those reverse platoon splits.
Let's compare Jordan Wicks to some other waiver wire pitchers from this weekend. And the first group includes Graham Ashcraft, who, of course, just kept it rolling on Sunday. Another quality start, 6 2/3 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts. He is at home against the Cubs this week. Mike Clevenger, an awesome start against the A's, 7 innings, 1 run, 10 strikeouts in that one. Brandon Pfaadt picked up his first win of his career, 5 1/3 innings, 2 runs with 5 strikeouts. And in 7 starts since returning from the minors, he has a 3.48 ERA and a 1.04 WHIP. And Hyunjin Ryu has pitched quite well for the Guardians. He has now made, I didn't write down how many starts, but the overall number is a 2.25 ERA, a 1.0 WHIP on the nose there. The problem, he is at Coors Field this week, so not great there. Scott, how do you rank that group? Ryu, Brandon Pfaadt, Mike Clevenger, and Graham Ashcraft.
I'm going to go Ashcraft dangerously. Living dangerously. Ashcraft number 1, Clevenger 2, Pfaadt 3, Ryu 4. Ryu has yet to go 6 innings in a start, and that's a big deal to me. And he's not a big strikeout guy at this stage of his career. That's a little concerning too. Excellent control pitcher. He does look basically like the guy we saw prior to his latest Tommy John surgery, but that guy was pretty fringy himself. So Ryu's bringing up the rear here. Even though I'm putting Ashcraft number 1, he didn't do what I hoped he'd do in this start. Because remember, I pointed out after his last one when he had 10 strikeouts in that one, that it seems like the strikeouts are tied to his sinker usage when he throws the sinker more. We saw him throw it 16% of the time in that 10 strikeout effort. 2 turns earlier, he threw it 21% of the time, got 7 strikeouts against the Marlins. I think it helps the cutter to play up. He threw only 3 sinkers in this game Sunday. So he's not committed to throwing. It doesn't seem like he's committed to throwing it more. It's just kind of, I don't know exactly what his plan is for it, but it doesn't seem like he plans to throw it more regularly based on what happened Sunday here. So that makes me wonder if the strikeouts are not on the rise, really, in which case all the underlying stats still look pretty scary for Graham Ashcraft. Still, it's hard to argue with the run of success he's been on when you're comparing him to other potential waiver wire pickups here. I also want to point out for Clevenger, who I did have as a sleeper because he was making 2 starts this past week, but I didn't have a lot of confidence in him. This was an eye-opening start in a lot of ways. I mean, not only did he allow just 1 hit in 7 innings, had 10 strikeouts in 7 innings, 21 swinging strikes, including 12 on his slider. In 6 starts now since returning from the IL for a bout with biceps inflammation, Mike Clevenger has a 2.31 ERA, an even 1 WHIP, 8.2 K per 9. It was against Oakland. Definitely worth pointing out. Worst offense in baseball. But still, to see that many whiffs on the slider makes me wonder if there is something here. So it's sort of like I was saying for Jordan Wicks, where if you need pitching help, I'm sure there's not a lot out there. I think it's a fine time to make a play for Clevenger, but you should have a pretty quick. You should have your finger on the trigger still if he looks, if he turns back into a pumpkin at his next start, which is the more likely scenario. I'm not saying you drop anybody valuable for him, but if you are stretching yourself for pitching help, if you are willing to stretch yourself for pitching help, then Clevenger, I think, has entered the discussion as somebody who deserves a look.
And of all the names that we've mentioned so far, Clevenger does have the best matchup this week going up against the Tigers. They are 28th in WOBA against right-handed pitching. Scott, would you put Wicks at the top of that list I just mentioned, ahead of Ashcraft, ahead of Clevenger?
Yeah, and I say that with some hesitance because I don't know what his next match, of the 3, he's the one I'd least likely trust to have in my lineup in his next start, knowing what Clevenger's matchup is, knowing the kind of role that Ashcraft's been on. Wicks seems like a total wild card to me. So I'd be afraid to put him in my lineup, but just, if that start goes well, how quickly will he enter into the start-sit conversation for us? Probably pretty quickly. Let me see if I can remind myself how good the Cubs matchups are down the stretch. Yeah, they're one of the clubs that has the best pitching matchups down the stretch. So that's another good reason to have Wicks at the top of that priority list.
One last question on the waiver wire pitchers here. In a shallower league, would you drop Hunter Greene for any of them? So Hunter Greene has made 2 starts since coming off the IL. He has allowed 13 earned runs. He's allowed 8 walks, 5 homers in those 2 starts combined. There's absolutely no way you could trust him right now in your lineups. He is facing the Giants this week. He's in Oracle Park. So on paper, it's a good matchup. It's a good venue to pitch him. But again, I don't think we could trust him. He's 86% rostered. What do you think, Scott? In shallower leagues, drop Hunter Greene for any of the names we've mentioned.
So I do think this is a good example to bring up to provide context to this whole discussion, because I don't think any of Jordan Hicks, Graham Ashcraft, or Mike Clevenger is... I don't have high enough confidence in any of them to burn the high upside play in Greene. Obviously, you can't start Greene right now, but it could all turn on a dime for him, and then he's giving double-digit strikeouts almost every time out in September. That is the scenario that could play out much easier for him than any of these guys we've been talking about. And so I'd be afraid to give him up, let him fall into somebody else's hands, and then I suffer twice over. I don't get the benefit of having Greene, and somebody gets to damage me with Greene. That doesn't seem like an optimal scenario. So unless it's a scenario where you need someone else for your lineup, because you're right, you can't start Greene right now. But if it's just for a bench spot, I'd rather hold on to Greene.
All right, I do have some other waiver wire pitchers, but I'll push that off to the side for now. I do want to get to my player of the weekend and talk about Parker Meadows of the Tigers. We mentioned him last week. He got promoted, and he's the brother of Austin Meadows, and It was a pretty solid weekend here for him. He went 1 for 2 with 2 walks and a 3-run walk-off homer on Friday. Electric stuff from him. And then went 2 for 4 with a stolen base on Saturday. He's played 6 games so far, so it's a very, very small sample size. But he is batting .300. He's got that homer, a steal, a 1040 OPS. And what I like most about Parker Meadows is the matchups this week. 9% rostered, 7 games, all against right-handed pitching. So I would expect Parker Meadows to be in there for every one of those games. I don't see why the Tigers wouldn't play him against right-handed pitching. They obviously want to see what this kid can do, and he's performed. Again, it's a small sample, but he does have 9 strikeouts in the 6 games played, which is a 36% strikeout rate. He also is hitting the ball extremely hard so far. 93 mile per hour average exit velocity, had some power and speed in the minors. I mentioned only 9% rostered. I think this is more of a deeper league play, Scott. He was available in some of my 15-team, 5 outfielder leagues this weekend. But I think even in a 12-team, 5 outfielder league, if you're just pretty desperate for an outfield play, given the 7 right-handed pitchers this week, I like Parker Meadows quite a bit.
Do you like Parker Meadows or Wilyer Abreu more? Because Abreu is the one I put on my sleeper hitters list for this week. And he did not. It's worth pointing out the Red Sox faced 2 righties and lefty this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 2 righties and lefty. Abreu sat against the lefty. He also sat against one of the 2 righties.
Yeah.
The Red Sox face, depending on whether the Astros go 6-man or 5-man, they're either facing 1 lefty or 0 lefties next week. So I expect Abreu to play a lot, but will it be as much as Meadows? Based on how they used him this weekend, I would guess no. I like the skill set more. Meadows has an element of speed that Abreu doesn't bring, but Abreu is a more disciplined hitter. I think the power is going to play better in the long run. So I lean Abreu, but there is more of a playing time question there, I think, with him than for Meadows.
So in all of my bids, I've got the backup bids going on Sunday night. I had Parker Meadows ahead of Wilyer Abreu, and it is because of the playing time. It's on this time of year, really looking for volume, and I think Parker Meadows should play. Maybe they give him off 1 game throughout the 7-day week, just to, give him some rest. But yeah, I think he's absolutely going to have more plate appearances this week, and I really like what I've seen so far. Yeah, it's tough with Abreu because the Red Sox, they have 3 great hitting outfielders right now. I mean, Duvall is red hot. Verdugo's
and he's available. It's worth pointing out before you dig into the Meadows and Abreu's of the world. Adam Duvall himself is available in 50% of CBS sports leagues. 5 home runs in 7 games. Red Sox have great matchups this week. A lot of people listening in those 3 outfielder leagues aren't going to have to go as deep as Meadows and Abreu. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your thought there.
No, it's all good. I guess the point is I would take Meadows over Abreu if you're talking about a deeper league. I do agree on Duvall. I would say the same thing about Seiya Suzuki, who's really hot since returning to the Cubs lineup. He had that little, mental break off for a couple of games. His last 16 games since returning to the lineup, he's hitting .389 with 4 homers, 15 runs, 11 RBI, just a 12% strikeout rate. He's 64% rostered and has 7 games this week. Couple of tough pitchers in there: Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Andrew Abbott. But I would take Suzuki ahead of Parker Meadows. Who would you take between Adam Duvall and Seiya Suzuki?
For just this upcoming week?
Yes.
I have Duvall higher.
Okay.
But if you're committing to one of those 2 the rest of the season, I'm going to make this really complicated. I'm going to say Suzuki. Because I think Suzuki's the more talented player, and the Cubs have significantly better matchups than the Red Sox beyond this week.
All right, fair enough. So lots of outfielders there, some names in shallower leagues, the deeper league ones: Parker Meadows, Wilyer Abreu. Let's take our first break, and when we return, I'll mention those other waiver wire pitchers. I've got some other waiver wire hitters from the weekend. We'll do that right after this.
Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
Welcome back into Fantasy Baseball Today, and a quick reminder that the Fantasy Football Today Draft-a-thon is this week on Wednesday, August 30th from 4 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. And they've been doing a great job raising money for St. Jude Children's Hospital. And if you want to help contribute, you can head to tinyurl.com/FFT donate, and you'll find some fun listings there on eBay. And if you're watching us live on YouTube, you can scan the QR code in the top right corner, and that will take you right to the website. And again, if you just want to watch the stream, it'll be live on YouTube, 4 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. And you can watch along with Adam and Dave and Jamie. They're going to have on a bunch of different guests, and they're going to talk rankings and mock drafts and all that kind of fun stuff if you're prepping for fantasy football. So make sure to check it out this week, Wednesday, August 30th from 4 to 10 p.m. Eastern time, the Fantasy Football Today Draftathon. Let's talk about some of those other waiver wire pitchers that I have here. And this next group includes Christopher Sanchez, who has turned in 3 straight quality starts. He was home against the Cardinals this weekend, where he allowed 2 runs over 6 innings with 6 strikeouts to 0 walks. Cutter Crawford has turned in 2 solid starts in a row. Tough matchup against the Dodgers, too, where he allowed just 2 runs over 5 innings with 7 strikeouts to 1 walk. And Patrick Sandoval seems like he gives us one of these starts, I don't know, every 4 or 5 times out, and there's not much consistency, but he did face the Mets this weekend, and he allowed just 1 run over 6 innings with 7 strikeouts. Anything on this group, Scott? Patrick Sandoval, Cutter Crawford, and Christopher Sanchez.
Well, I want to say with Sandoval, just when we think we're out, he pulls us back in, but I'm not really feeling tempted to be pulled back in. So I guess that's not the right thing to say. Christopher Sanchez feels like what Ranger Suarez. Well, Sanchez feels like he could be what Ranger Suarez was down the stretch 2 years ago, like the sneaky waiver wire ad who was just a rock for your pitching staff down the stretch. His ground ball rate since being called up, Christopher Sanchez, if that was a full season ground ball rate, like he had enough innings to qualify, it would be the second best ground ball rate among starting pitchers. Only Logan Webb's is better. So he has a skill that's known for limiting damage and keeping runs off the board. And he's been a quality start machine since getting called up. Good offense backing him. I think Sanchez is a priority pickup. I like him even more than that previous group we talked about. I like Sanchez more than Ashcraft. I like him more than Jordan Wicks. He's like I said, a priority pickup for me. Crawford has been good. You know, his starts tend to be short, and so the utility for fantasy isn't quite there. But he gets swinging strikes and strikeouts at a nice clip, and is at least usable when he has the right matchups. The one I'm least trusting of these 3 is actually Sandoval.
And what's funny about Sandoval is that he actually probably has the best matchup this week. He's at the Oakland A's, and they're 28th in WOBA against left-handed pitching. And, you know, we saw Cole Reagans is kind of in a category of his own, but he is a lefty, and he dominated Oakland last week. So it wouldn't surprise me if Sandoval does have a good start this upcoming week.
But it also wouldn't surprise me if he didn't.
Also true. Let's get into this next group of pitchers from the weekend. Javier Assad, as we mentioned earlier, turned in a quality start in 3 of his last 4 outings. He was at the Pirates. He went 7 innings with 1 run allowed, 7 strikeouts in that one. Griffin Canning and David Peterson, they both pitched extremely well against each other on Sunday. Canning went 7 innings. He allowed 1 run with 9 strikeouts and 17 swinging strikes. David Peterson on the other side, 7 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts for him, 12 swinging strikes on 104 pitches. Any interest in this group? Assad, Canning, and Peterson.
I've long had interest in Canning, and he's had stretches this year where he looked like he was about to break through. I mean, another great start here. What was interesting about this start for Canning is that normally when he gets a bunch of strikeouts, it's the slider leading the way. And this one, it was his fastball. 10 of his 17 whiffs came on the fastball. We haven't known that to be, well, I mean, looking at the season-long whiff rate, it's actually pretty good. It's up over 27%, which is good for a fastball. But we haven't seen it be like the highlight of the season before. Every time he Every time he flashes a new weapon other than that slider, I get a little more excited. And obviously he has room to run here. He has runway with Shohei Ohtani being unavailable to pitch. By the way, this answers the question, I think, of it was a good question, whether removing Ohtani from the rotation is going to mean the Angels go 5-man, go with a traditional 5-man going forward, which would be good news for all of their remaining pitchers, right? Lucas Giolito, he might actually get some 2-star weeks again. Canning wasn't in the rotation until Shohei Ohtani went down. So it looks like they are going 6-man, reinserting him here. So even though I have interest in Canning, even though he had a great start here at the Mets, overall it's bad news that he's in the rotation, I would say. It's a net negative for fantasy players on the whole.
With Patrick Sandoval, the Angels are facing Oakland later this week. So if you're just looking for a matchup play, Griffin Canning looks like he is going to be at the Oakland A's later this week. 2 names in the deepest leagues, and maybe you put a little asterisk next to them because they both face the Marlins, and obviously the Marlins are a pretty good matchup. But Yoan Adon, that's Adon. Yoan Adon, a dominant start at the Marlins this weekend. 6 shutout innings with 3 strikeouts. He throws a bunch of different pitches, has not been very good in the minors so far, but he's 2% rostered. And guess who he's facing this week? The Miami Marlins. Once again, his teammate Jake Irvin has turned in 3 straight quality starts, and he allowed just 1 run over 6 innings with 3 strikeouts at the Marlins as well. 8% rostered. Who does he face this week? You guessed it, the Miami Marlins. Scott, anything on these 2 in the deepest of leagues?
I actually did pick up Adon in an NL-only league. I imagine it's the sort of decision I'll come to regret when he has a blow-up start, inevitably. But in his last 6 starts, Yoan Adon has a 2.91 ERA, a 1.12 WHIP, very low strikeout rate. I think he's getting it done because he also has a very high fly ball rate. So as long as he keeps the ball in the yard, he's able to limit damage. But that is a boomer bust profile, especially when you don't have a lot of strikeout potential. So I wouldn't have a lot of faith in it lasting. Irvin has been surprisingly strong here as well. His last 3 starts, a 1.45 ERA, 1.12 WHIP, 7.7 K per 9, a little better than Adon, but still not great. But what stands out for Irvin, aside from the performance, is now in 4 straight starts, he's seen his velocity up basically across the board. It still has only led to 7.7 K per 9 in 3 starts, so I'm still thinking probably not somebody we want to put much faith in. But I am taking note of Irvin every time he starts now to see how long he can keep this going.
All right, let's slide over to the waiver wire hitters. And we already spoke about some of the outfielders, Adam Duvall and Seiya Suzuki, who we are excited about right now. DJ LeMahieu, a bit of a power surge here, something I did not see coming for him. He went 3 for 4 with a double dong on Friday and now has 4 home runs over his past 5 games. He's led off 10 straight for the Yankees. Not that matters too much because their lineup has been very underwhelming in the second half of the season. But he's 42% rostered. He has triple eligibility, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. 7 road games this week. Scott, any interest in DJ LeMahieu?
I think that would only be an as needed situation. I don't, I've been saying this for a couple years now. I don't know. Do you think he has much left anymore? Or are you basically out on LeMahieu as a fantasy asset?
I was basically out up until this recent stretch. I don't really know.
You got hot and now you're back in?
No, not necessarily.
So over the last 3 seasons, DJ LeMahieu has a 720 OPS.
Right.
Since the pandemic shortened season where he was amazing, finished 3rd in MVP voting. Since then, he has a 720 OPS. And I just think that says it all right there. I know you and Chris have at times pointed out, oh, he had an injury for this stretch. So that's why he struggled and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I think he's just a 35-year-old who never had that much power in the first place. And now this is what the end of his career looks like.
He's still signed for 3 more years too. Oh my gosh. Oh,
I mean,
God.
look, how much is he making a year?
That's just my Yankee pessimism, by the way. I mean, good
Oh,
for
he's
him.
making like 15 million a year.
Oh,
He's a fine utility player. I'm not saying he brings nothing to the table, but for fantasy,
oh no. I mean, you're absolutely right.
it's just another guy.
This is kind of, yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy how eerily similar his OPS has been each of the past 3 years. 711, 734, 717, and his strikeout rate has spiked in a big way this year, up to 22% after he wasn't over 14% in any season since 2015. So that's a pretty bad sign for an aging utility player, 35 years old now, with DJ LeMahieu. 2 catchers, Mitch Garver, someone we talk about a lot recently. He had 2 more home runs this weekend. He has 3 home runs in his past 5 games, and he is 39% rostered. He's got 6 games this upcoming week. And Gary Sanchez, 2 more home runs this weekend. Still just waiting for Gary Sanchez to slow down. It's kind of crazy. He has 18 home runs in 68 games, 18 homers. That ranks 6th at the catcher position. And among catchers with at least 200 plate appearances, Gary Sanchez's 279 isolated power is first among all catchers. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Scott, the Padres have the number 1 hitter matchups this week. So let's say if you're just thinking about this week, would you rather have Mitch Garver or Gary Sanchez?
I would rather have Gary Sanchez. Yeah, number 1 hitter matchups. They have 1 more game than the Rangers. Garver, you can't reliably count on him to be in the lineup against righties. So yeah, I think Sanchez is the better play. And he never lost his ability to hit home runs. He just lost his ability to hit. And honestly, the year he's having this year isn't unlike the year he had in 2021 when he batted .204 with 23 homers in 117 games for the Yankees. It's just we had much higher expectations for Sanchez then, so it feels like a big surprise that he's doing this now.
And it's so crazy because it felt like he was out of baseball earlier this season, right? Like he was done. He was just kind of bouncing around. He signed on with the Mets for a couple of days, and then he signed on with the Padres. And I remember making jokes about him DHing for them because they had no other options at that point. And he's hitting for power. If nothing else, he's kind of doing Gary Sanchez things. And I was listening to the Padres broadcast earlier on Sunday, and they mentioned he's using a new bat this year, that axe handle bat.
Oh yeah.
Who knows? Maybe
All the rage.
That's
the
what's
axe handle bat.
That's what's helped Gary Sanchez potentially this season. A few deeper league infielders. Josh Rojas went 2 for 5 with a home run on Saturday. He picked up another steal on Sunday, and over his last 14 games, he's batting .367 with 3 home runs and 4 steals. The Mariners have the 3rd best hitter matchups this week, according to Scott. Davis Schneider is someone I know that you and Chris spoke about the week that I was out partying with Metallica. Davis Schneider went 3 for 3 with a home run on Saturday and then hit another home run on Sunday. There's current injuries to both Bo Bichette and Matt Chapman, so maybe Davis Schneider gets a chance this week, and they've got 3 games in Coors Field. I think in a deeper league, he's kind of interesting. The Rockies also promoted a prospect named Hunter Goodman on Sunday. He went 2 for 4 with a run and an RBI. He's 23 years old. This season in the minors, he hit 34 home runs with a .918 OPS. The limited sample in AAA, where I could see the StatCast data, it looks pretty good. 91.7 average exit velocity. I do think there's some power here for Hunter Goodman. Scott, any interest in this group? Goodman, Davis Schneider, and Josh Rojas.
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of excited about Schneider when he came up and had that 9-hit weekend for the Blue Jays fresh out of the minors, and then they hardly played him after that. So I think the playing time is still very much in question for him. He started back-to-back games over the weekend, but he had gone 4 games without having a start. He'd only started like one of the previous 10 games before those back-to-back starts over the weekend. But he was a player who showed great on-base skills in the minors in addition to having power. I don't know where all these multi-hit games are coming from for Schneider, but I would like to see more of him. I'm just not confident he's going to get it. I I think it might be a little more possible that Hunter Goodman does, because the Rockies really haven't had an answer at first base since trading CJ Crone. We've seen a lot of Elahuris Montero there, who's not very good. Michael Tolia, also not very good. Goodman, you mentioned he had the 34 homers in the minors this year, 36 in the minors last year. Didn't get a lot of prospect hype because he's kind of Evan Gaddisy, like he was a catcher originally, but he wasn't good enough to stay a catcher, but he wasn't really nimble enough to play anywhere else either. So he's kind of positionless first base. Maybe he'll be able to handle that well enough. We'll see how much he actually plays, but the power is legit and he's going to have the benefit of Coors Field. So in deeper roto leagues, I think he's of interest. Both he and Schneider are of interest, but between the two, I think I see a clear path to at bats for Goodman.
I do kind of like Josh Rojas too, who I threw in there at least for this upcoming week. They do have 2 lefties on the schedule, so not sure if he'll play in those games, but he's hot right now. That Mariners lineup they're all hot. So I wouldn't mind getting a little piece of that. Again, that's deeper leagues. He was available in some of my 15-team leagues here over the weekend. 3 other names. These are even deeper. I mean, we're talking AL, NL only. Are you ready for this name, Scott?
Sure.
Carter Kieboom. He went 1 for 3 with a 2-run homer on Friday, a former top prospect with the Nationals. He's been out with injury the past couple of years. He has 2 home runs in 5 games with the Nats, and looks like they're going to give him an opportunity to play down the stretch, see what he could do. Lennon Sosa started all 3 games this weekend, even with Tim Anderson back. So similarly, I think the White Sox want to see what they have in him, and he hit 2 home runs this weekend. And then a gentleman named Nick Martini, who is on the Cincinnati Reds. He went 2 for 3 with a double dong on Friday, 3 for 4 with 2 RBI on Saturday. He's a journeyman, 33 years old, left-handed hitting outfielder. I don't know how long he's going to stick around, but he had a big weekend. Yeah. Anything on Martini, Sosa, and Carter Kieboom?
I can't really imagine picking up any of these guys outside of an AL or NL only league. Kieboom was he did emerge as a top prospect one year, but he was kind of a one-hit wonder in the minors, if my memory serves me correctly. I guess he had a couple good years back to back, but this year in 44 games in the minors, Kieboom slashed just 256, 362. Now base percentage is pretty good, actually. 256, 362, 411. So I'm not optimistic that he's going to be of much use other than just give you some at bats in an NL only league, in which not many people playing. Martini might be interesting, but he's clearly just a fill-in, and there's a reason he's been mostly confined to the minors through age 33.
Team name Tuesday, Carter Kieboom goes the dynamite.
Not the first time I've heard that one.
Alrighty.
He was all the rage back when he first got called up. I don't know if you were doing this fantasy. What year was that?
I am well aware, Scott.
2019.
My first year playing in the NFBC main event, Carter Kieboom got called up, and I thought he was going to be awesome. And I spent something like 25% of my fab budget on Carter Kieboom. It did not work out very well.
It feels longer ago than 2019. If you had told me it was 2013.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, it feels like it was ages ago. Let's talk about some news and notes from the weekend. Bichette left Sunday's game due to right quad tightness. Doesn't sound good for this upcoming week. Have you seen anything else, Scott? What do you think about start or sit on Bichette?
I mean, given the nature of the injury, I'd be pessimistic.
Make sure you have a backup ready, basically.
Yeah, but we'll have to hear more.
Yep. Rafael Devers out of the lineup Sunday after getting hit by a pitch on his right wrist on Saturday. X-rays came back negative, and it's a similar situation. It's make sure you have a backup ready to go just in case for this week, because I would say at the least I would expect Devers to miss a couple of games.
Well, the Red Sox, what I've seen from those on the Red Sox beat is that they're hopeful he can play tomorrow, meaning Monday. So that doesn't mean he will, but I would be optimistic about Devers. I'm pessimistic about Bichette. I'm optimistic about Devers.
Okay, so make sure to check the lineups on Monday once they're out. And if Devers is in, good to go. Make sure you keep him in your lineups. Pete Alonso was hit by a pitch in the head/neck area on Saturday, but passed concussion protocol and was in the lineup on Sunday. Some, I guess, rumors, news from the weekend. Pete Alonso, sounds like the Mets are going to shop him this offseason. Like, pretty legit. It's so interesting because he's a homegrown talent and living here in New York. He seems beloved by Mets fans. I don't know why the Mets wouldn't want to sign him to an extension outside of like maybe he's asking for some kind of exorbitant amount of money that they don't want to give him. But that's kind of weird, isn't it? He's good. He's really good.
Yeah. It's, he's a free agent after next year, right? Is that right? Wow, that came up quickly for him.
Yeah, he is older than you would think, though. I think he's pushing 30.
Yeah, and there's that, and obviously he's confined to first base. And I kind of wonder if they think first base is the best spot for Brett Beatty, and that's factoring into this decision. Because there have always been questions about Beatty's defense. But just, I don't know. I think like the way they were talking after trading away Scherzer and Verlander is that they're out for next year too. Like next year is a rebuild year. And so maybe they're just thinking this is a big trade asset to help us reload our system. And, it might just depend on what they get in return for Alonso, whether they actually go through with it. But of course they are New York, and you're right. He's been a star level player there. And if any team can afford him, you would think it's them. So it is a bit perplexing. I agree.
I know the Milwaukee Brewers were linked to Pete Alonso. There was a story that came out earlier in the week from, I think, Ken Rosenthal, that they were, the Brewers were poking around at the trade deadline. So that could be a team this offseason to watch with Pete Alonso. Yandy Diaz has missed 2 straight with a sore left forearm. Jonathan Aranda has started both games in his place. I guess we have to find out more. Same thing with Yandy Diaz. It's like when he's in the lineup, he's amazing, but we've got to see if he's good to go on Monday. Scary moment on Saturday as Chase Silseth was hit in the head by a throw from his teammate, Trey Cabbage. Thankfully, Silseth was released from the hospital and has not been diagnosed with a concussion. My guess is that he won't make his next start, but I don't know that for sure, Scott.
Oh, maybe the Angels will go with a 5-man rotation after all.
They might. They could do that.
I had Chase Silseth as a sleeper pitcher for this week, scheduled to go against the Athletics. I have since removed him from that list. So I would plan on starting someone else for sure.
Jared Kelenic is set to begin a rehab assignment at AAA this week. He's been out since July 19th with a fractured left foot. He's 56% rostered. If you have an available spot in your IL, if you want to stash Jared Kelenic, the Dodgers optioned Ryan Pepiot back to AAA this weekend. It sounds like he could be back up this week to serve as either a 5th starter or a bulk reliever. Is this surprising, Scott, or is this just kind of roster manipulation for the Dodgers?
More the latter. I know I was pretty excited about Pepiot last week, and I still am, but it does seem like the Dodgers are taking this unorthodox approach of kind of rotating him, Gavin Stone, and Emmett Sheehan through rather than just sticking with any one of them. And so that makes them all pretty unusable. But hopefully one of them emerges. If one of them, my bet would be Pepiot, if any one of them is.
Speaking of the Dodgers, Tony Gonsolin was transferred to the 60-day IL and could need surgery that would affect his 2024 availability. You mentioned the name there, Gavin Stone. He was recalled, and he pitched 6 innings in relief on Sunday. He allowed 4 earned runs in his last 8 games, 7 starts in the minors. Gavin Stone had a 2.85 ERA and a 1.02 WHIP, over a strikeout per inning. But as you just mentioned, it sounds like you like Pepiot more than Gavin Stone.
Yeah, I do. He still allowed 3 home runs in this one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I have not been impressed by what I've seen from Stone at the major league level this year, as good as his minor league numbers were last year.
Lars Nootbaar is expected to be activated from the IL within the next week. He's been out since August 17 after taking a foul tip off the pelvic region. Keibert Ruiz is likely to return to the Nats lineup on Monday. He's been dealing with some lightheadedness after taking a foul tip off his catcher's mask. Matt Chapman left Sunday due to an inflamed right middle finger, and he hasn't been great this year, so I probably wouldn't risk it. Make sure you have a replacement ready to go for Matt Chapman as well.
How did Matt Chapman get that inflamed middle finger, I wonder? Who did he inflame with that middle finger, I wonder? I don't know. Middle finger injuries are always funny to me. I don't know.
More to come.
Yeah.
Stay tuned on the Matt Chapman saga. Michael Brantley could be cleared to return to the Astros on Tuesday, and he is only 12% rostered. 2 questions here, Scott. Any interest for fantasy in Michael Brantley, and does this affect Yainer Diaz? It's like every week we have a new obstacle for Yainer Diaz. It's annoying.
And every week he leaps right over it.
Let's go.
I think Dusty Baker's in now. I noticed he got a couple starts. Was it a couple starts at catcher over the weekend, Diaz? Double check that. Talking out of my behind here. He started Thursday at catcher. He started Saturday at catcher. So, I don't know. Baker. Who calls him Baker? Everybody calls him Dusty. Dusty seems to want to see him in the lineup.
So with Yainer Diaz, he didn't start on Sunday, but he started the previous 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 games before that. So
there you go. And he came off the bench Sunday and went 2 for 2 with a homer. So
that's all he does, baby. That's all he does. 2 players who went to the IL this weekend worth mentioning: Jake Cronenworth with a right wrist fracture and Michael Conforto with a left hamstring strain. Elliot Ramos was recalled. Let's take our final break. When we return, I've got some starter sit questions and then a few leftovers. We'll do that right after this.
Get breaking news.
Big news coming out of the NFL today.
Highlights and instant reaction.
The largest final round comeback in tour championship history. We're down to the final 4.
I just want to take time to analyze greatness.
Talk winners and losers with a guy who's already a big winner.
CBS Sports HQ. It's all sports all day long.
Welcome back into Fantasy Baseball today. Scotty, let's go rapid fire. We got to keep these answers short and sweet. Starter sit these fringe 2-star pitchers. Framber Valdez is better than a fringe pitcher. And these aren't 2-star pitchers. I don't know why I said that. But he threw 7 no-hit innings this weekend. Probably should have mentioned this earlier. Did have 5 walks, 16 swinging strikes on 114 pitches. But he has been so up and down. He's made 8 starts in the second half, a 5.33 ERA, a 1.22 whip. And that includes 2 starts where he allowed no hits. So, yeah, some of those other ones have been pretty bad here, Scott. Quick thoughts on Framber Valdez.
In the 9 no-hit innings, remember he made the curveball his most used pitch. In these 7 no-hit innings, he threw the curveball 14% of the time. So, like, even usage-wise, pitch usage, it's hard to make sense of. But 2 starts this week, you said, Valdez. I'm not even sure that's true. It's going to depend on whether
I don't think it is. I think he's 1 start against Boston.
Yeah, if the Astros have any 2-star pitcher this week, it's Javier. But I'm not sure if they're going 6-man or 5-man, so it might be no one. Anyway, probably start Valdez, yeah.
Okay, let's slide over to Joe Ryan, who made his return. He was facing the Rangers, where he allowed 1 run over 5 innings. He had 7 strikeouts with 12 swinging strikes on 80 pitches. Pretty successful return, I would say. Would you start him at the Rangers this week? That's back-to-back starts against the same offense.
They've
been a little bit cold recently, but overall they've been good against right-handed pitching.
I think Ryan is fixed, though. Those 7 starts prior to going on the IL where he gave up like 17 home runs. We came to find out the groin injury was messing up his delivery, and he looked great on his rehab start, looked great in this return. I'm starting Ryan.
Mitch Keller has turned in back-to-back dominant starts. He was facing the Cubs this weekend, where he threw 8 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts. The velocity was down, so something to monitor with Mitch Keller. He is at the Royals this week. Start or sit?
Start. There's 3 pretty good starts in a row, 2 great ones. And obviously that's a great matchup.
Dylan Cease was clobbered by the Oakland A's this weekend. He allowed 9 runs, 8 of those earned over 4 1/3 innings. He's now rocking a 4.87 ERA and a 1.46 whip on the season. I think there's no way we could start him at the Baltimore Orioles, right?
Well, you're right about him being globby. I said he wasn't. You said he was. You were right, and I would prefer to sit him against the Orioles.
Yep. Same here. Yu Darvish has been pretty globby himself all season. He allowed 5 runs over 4 innings, and he is at the Cardinals this weekend. They are 6th in WOBA against right-handed pitching.
I'm sorry, I missed the name.
Yu Darvish.
Oh, gosh. That's somebody who's been up and down. He feels like a random number generator himself.
I don't love it, honestly.
And that's a middling matchup. Like, I could go either way. It depends what my options are, but I don't think it's a high priority to get Darvish in your lineup.
Julio Urias was on a great stretch recently, and then what happened? Hit hard by the Boston Red Sox. He allowed 6 runs, 3 home runs over 6 innings, and this week he's home against the Atlanta Braves, number 1 in WOBA against lefties.
By a lot, too.
Yeah.
But it is Julio Urias. I lean talent over matchup usually. You don't like it, Frank. I can read it all over your face. You don't like it.
I kind of feel like outside of the top 10 to 15 pitchers, there is not a single pitcher I would want to play against the Atlanta Braves. So I don't have Julio. I think I have Urias more like a top 25 starting pitcher personally. So if you have a better option, if in a points league, if you want to go with some volume with like a 2-star pitcher or something like that, I don't think it's crazy. James Paxton on the other side was facing the Dodgers. Obviously, it's a pretty tough matchup, but he's kind of going through it right now. 4 1/3 innings, 4 runs allowed, 5 walks to 4 strikeouts, and in the second half, 8 starts for Paxton. He has a 5.82 ERA and a 1.66 WHIP. He's at the Royals this week. That's a pretty good matchup, Scott. What do we do?
Well, I was all geared up to say sit him, but yes, that is such a good matchup that maybe Paxton does deserve one last chance. Somebody tweeted at me, I forget who it was, can't give you credit, sorry. After I was talking about Paxton last time, saying once they began going with a traditional 5-man rotation, that's when he started to fall apart. Like, he started getting less rest in between starts. And I looked it up. So in 14 starts with 5 or more days of rest, 5 or 6 days of rest, basically, Paxton has a 2.95 ERA. In 4 starts with only 4 days rest, 9.39 ERA. So there's probably something to that. His fastball was down 1.5 in this start against the Dodgers. Also not what you want to see. But I'm inclined to give him one last ride against the Royals. Would you start? Here's the good one for you, Frank. Would you start Paxton against the Royals or Urias versus the Braves?
You stole my next question, Scott.
I'm going to ask you because I don't want to answer it.
Yeah, I would probably start Paxton, but I don't feel too great about either. Hunter Brown had a bounce-back start at the Tigers. He allowed 2 runs over 5 innings with 9 strikeouts. He's still 87% rostered, but only 44% started on CBS. He is home against the Yankees this week. Their lineup is not great. Thoughts on Hunter Brown?
Yeah, I was pretty much riding him off. He had a great start this weekend. That's a good matchup. I lean yes on that one. That is one where I would definitely start Urias over him if it came down to that specific choice. For the few people that impacts who have both Hunter Brown and Julio Urias and no obvious leaning on either, I say Urias over Brown, but Brown's an okay start with that matchup.
Last name on this list, Bailey Ober hit hard on Sunday against the Rangers. He allowed 5 runs over 4 innings, and in 5 starts in August, a 5.63 ERA, a 1.50 WHIP. He's at the Rangers again this week, so back-to-back, facing the same offense. I think it's a pretty clear sit for me.
I agree. 6 straight starts, less than 6 innings for Ober, who is well over his previous high in innings. And I imagine the Twins are going to take it easy on him all the way home.
One might say that he's well over his innings limit this season. But
Yeah.
Pitching standouts, pitching leftovers from the weekend. We've got this first group here. Garrett Cole strengthened his Cy Young case at the Tampa Bay Rays, 7 2/3 innings, 2 runs allowed with 11 strikeouts on the other side of that. Zach Eflin put up a season-high 11 strikeouts against the Yankees. Kodai Senga turned in his third double-digit strikeout start of the season, 6 2/3 innings, 2 runs, 10 strikeouts with 21 swinging strikes against the Angels. And Sonny Gray, another strong start up against the Rangers, 7 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts. Fun fact on Sonny Gray, he has a 286 FIP this year. That is tied for second among qualified starting pitchers, with Kevin Gausman trailing only Spencer Strider. Any thoughts on Sonny Gray, Senga, Eflin, and Garrett Cole?
That is a funny fact. That is a fun fact on Sonny Gray. See, that's why I got confused. I did want to point out with Zach Eflin. So of his 17 swinging strikes in this 11 strikeout game, 7 came on the sweeper, which he threw 13% of the time. That's a pitch he hardly was throwing prior to this start. It was like 2% was his usual usage on the sweepers. 13%, and it got 7 whiffs. If he has a new weapon there developing, that could make him pretty special.
Pitching standouts, part 2. Brandon Woodruff had his best start of the season up against the Padres. 6 innings, 1 run, 11 strikeouts there. Spencer Strider, dominant at the Giants. 7 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts with 24 swinging strikes. Max Fried had a bounce-back start at the Giants as well. 6 innings, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts with 12 swinging strikes. And Logan Gilbert, a strong outing up against the Royals. He allowed just 1 run over 7 innings with 7 strikeouts and 16 swinging strikes. Anything to add on Gilbert, Fried, Strider, and you know what I just thought of? Gilbert Gottfried. That was funny. Gilbert Fried. Spencer Strider and Brandon Woodruff.
Yeah, so Woodruff and Fried both looked more like themselves, and I'm going to mention a guy here who I don't think you have in the rundown, but it's probably even more notable is Carlos Rodon. He only lasted 4 2/3 innings at the Rays, but he struck out 7. He had 18 swinging strikes on 84 pitches. It was the most Rodon-like Carlos Rodon has looked at in any start this season. Interestingly, he threw 52% sliders in this one versus the usual 30%. And the slider's been like the slider entering this game had a 45% whiff rate. The slider has actually been more effective than last year, while the fastball's been less effective than last year. So maybe he's figured that out. He's like, I got to throw more sliders. It worked against the Rays. It was just a short outing, but I have some hope for Carlos Rodon after this one.
Carlos Rodon, the problem I noticed with him, the matchup this week at the Houston Astros, they are 3rd in WOBA against left-handed pitching. So
yeah, I'm not saying you have to start him yet, but I'm saying there's hope.
Pitching standouts, part 3. Yuri Perez, another strong start. 6 innings, 1 unearned run with 7 strikeouts, 14 swinging strikes on 76 pitches. That is just a great percentage of swinging strikes. Tyler Glasnow, a bounce-back start up against the Yankees, where he threw 6 shutout with 4 strikeouts. Did you know Kyle Bradish is 3rd in the American League in ERA? Well, he threw another quality start this weekend. He had 8 strikeouts. His ERA is now down to 3.03 on the year. Freddie Peralta kept it rolling this weekend as well. 5 1/3 innings, 2 runs, 9 strikeouts, and his last 6 starts, a 1.75 ERA, .86 whip, 59 strikeouts over 36 innings for Freddie Peralta. Anything on him, Bradish, Glasnow, and Yuri Perez?
I would say for this group, Peralta, just continuing to enjoy it while it's happening. I have no idea. I have no idea what's changed for him from earlier this season when he was struggling so badly, but he's clearly lighting it up right now, and we've seen him do that before. So just enjoy it. Bradish, I still think Bradish belongs in the glob, even though his ERA is now down to 3.03, and so part of that worries me. Like, okay, when is the tide going to turn here for this globby pitcher? But obviously, practically speaking, you just have to enjoy that while it lasts too. There was something interesting with his pitch selection. Let me see if I can find it. So he threw his slider more, and it got 10 of his 17 whiffs. And I know that pitch has good metrics, like stuff plus wise.
Yep.
So that's probably a step in the right direction for Bradish. The reason I'm calling him globby is, his actual strikeout rate's pretty ordinary. Not bad, but not great either.
Yeah, along those same lines with the pitch mix for Bradish, he lowered his four-seam usage in this one. He threw more sliders, cutters, and sinkers. Sliders, curves, and sinkers, excuse me. And his fastball has been destroyed this season. 398 batting average against and a 663 slug. So I think that's a really good idea for Bradish. Throw less four-seam fastballs. Last group here, Max Scherzer with a vintage performance at the Minnesota Twins. 7 innings, 2 runs, 10 strikeouts. Zach Wheeler posted his 4th double-digit strikeout start of the season. He allowed just 1 run over 7 innings with 10 strikeouts there. Aaron Nola, 2 great starts in a row. I'm sorry, Scott. I know you want him to struggle so you can get him at a discount next year. 7 shutout with 1 hit, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts for Nola. And Luis Castillo, a great start Sunday against the Royals. 7 shutout with 6 strikeouts there. The old wily vets, Luis Castillo, Nola, Wheeler, and Max Scherzer.
I don't know if this is actually encouraging or not for Nola, but in his last 10 starts, he has a 3.94 ERA. Pretty high, but below 4. 112 whip, 10.4 K per 9. I don't know. Scherzer has looked like retro Scherzer ever since joining the Rangers, basically. So I think that's fine to just assume that's who he is going forward. Wheeler, this is definitely encouraging. Last 7 starts for Wheeler, 2.51 ERA, 0.88 whip, 9.4 K per 9.
Just a few quick numbers here from the hitter side of things. Some standouts from the weekend. I did want to give a shout out to Teoscar Hernandez, who looks pretty hot right now. He hit 3 more home runs this weekend, and in the month of August, he has an OPS over 1,000. Ohtani played, obviously, this weekend, even following the UCL diagnosis. He had 3 hits, including 2 steals. And Corbin Carroll became the 4th rookie ever to hit 20-plus home runs and 40-plus steals in a season, joining Mike Trout, Mitchell Page, and Tommy Agee?
I think that's how you say that, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know how to say that guy's name, and I definitely should know how to say that guy's name. The call to the bullpen, a few updates from this weekend. For the Angels, Carlos Estevez picked up 2 saves. Good to see from him. Now up to 28 saves. It's been a little bit scary recently for Carlos Estevez, but looked good this weekend. For the D-backs on Friday, Paul Sewald was unavailable. Kevin Ginkel picked up his 4th save, and then on Saturday, Sewald was back. He had a 1-run lead. He gave up 2 runs, and the D-backs wind up losing in extra innings. And then on Sunday, Sewald was unavailable once again. Ryan Thompson picked up his 1st save of the year. For the Mariners, Sewald's former team, on Friday, Andres Munoz did run into some trouble, but picked up his 9th save. And then on Sunday, he struck out the side for his 10th save. I feel like we could say this for both teams. The Mariners and D-backs, it feels like they have had a save opportunity every night or every day since making that trade. It's just like Sewald and Munoz are just getting so many opportunities right now. It's crazy stuff.
And Munoz has had his ups and downs, but 8 for 10 in saves since the trade.
Yeah.
He's, I think he's been mostly what we'd hoped he'd be in fantasy.
For the Red Sox on Saturday, Kenley Jansen was nursing a hamstring injury, so John Schreiber picked up his 1st save. And then on Sunday, mentioned this earlier, for the Rangers, Aroldis Chapman did get the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. He gave up a run on 2 walks and a hit, took his 5th blown save of the year, but I do think Aroldis Chapman is the guy for now. To stream or not to stream on Monday, we have nearly a full slate of games Monday, Scott. I think it's 14 games, so
yep.
It's going to be a busy night for the boys.
And then there are only 3 games on Thursday.
Oh, oof. All right. Well, might have to have the Welsh on a little fantasy feud this coming Thursday night.
Wait a second. 4 games. 4 games on Thursday.
Still going to have to do something crazy. 4 games. On Monday, we have, I think, Brian Wu against the Oakland A's. Probably the top option.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Probably too risky, right? Like Severino at the Tigers.
I don't trust Severino. I'd be more likely to start Johan Oviedo at KC.
Okay.
Not that I love that, but
right.
he kind of feels like a random number generator, but his good starts have been really good, and that's a great matchup.
I don't really love any of these other ones.
Like, if I could trust Kyle Harrison to go 5 innings, I'd like him against the Reds, but he might not even go 4 innings.
Right. So it's mostly Brian Wu and Johan Oviedo on Monday. On Tuesday, we've got Dean Kramer up against the White Sox. We have, Cole Reagan's, he's the guy, versus the Pirates. Cole Reagan, obviously pick him up. He's more than a streamer, but he is number one amongst both Monday and Tuesday. So I said Kramer against the White Sox. I like Brandon Williamson at the Giants. That's my guy.
Yeah, he's a distant third for me on this list. There's something to this. I said third instead of third because my next word was going to be 4. And I did that a minute ago. I don't know. Trying to crack the code here. Yeah. Anyway, Riggins, Kramer, and then a distant third is Williamson.
All right. A little bit of a longer episode today, but obviously lots of news with the Felix Bautista, lots to recap from the weekend. We're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.